Arrow Season 6, Episode 2, Tribute. Now this episode I'd say was pretty interesting. I like the character dynamics more than anything else. I think they actually did a pretty good job with that. Oliver, of course, dealing with the second, basically, superhero interrogation that he went through, which I couldn't believe it. He actually freaking got out of it. I was surprised how simple it was, although the way they ended it was actually interesting too, because it turned out that the picture was actually doctored. Like, that was like the whole thing was like, we found out that it was actually a complete fake. So I was like, alright, well, it wasn't sent in by Chase, which was like the big thing. And then Anatoly, who made a surprise appearance super early in the season. This is the first time he's been in the season this early. He comes in and is like, well, we think it might have been him, and kind of setting things up to throw Oliver off his game so that he could get the $20 million in this episode. But even that, it all came down to like, that wasn't me. The photo was actually doctored. And I was just kind of up in the air again, like, well, who did that? And why would they do it at this point? So it's like, it's either someone that does actually know Oliver is the Green Arrow, or it's just someone who's a douchebag. And I would have to assume it's the former. Like, otherwise it's just a super random thing. Unless it's someone who's just like, I want to be mayor, so I want to get him out of there. I don't know. I doubt that's the case. I hope it's not, because that's just dumb. But it does bring up that really big question as to who in the world did this and why did they do it if it wasn't something super immediate, So it has me very curious. I'm excited to see how that's going to end up playing out. But the episode in general, I thought was really good. Like I said, the character dynamics I thought worked out pretty well. We had a couple of different stories going on. Of course, Oliver dealing with the investigation itself kind of strained his relationship with his son, which is already strained. So we're kind of going through that, which I will admit has actually been fairly decent. I know we're still super early in the season, but just these last two, I've really enjoyed the way they've kind of played the dynamic. Of course, he had to build up, that trust with his son in the last episode, and in this one, he has like the moment when they're in the limo, which is really one of my favorite scenes, honestly, because he's trying to figure out, like how to help his son because he dealt with some bullies. And that leads to some really great stuff where Oliver is kind of put down this path, which he actually goes towards by the very end of the episode. But he's put on this path by his own son, where even though Oliver gave him some hilarious, it was almost funny, the advice he gave him about like hitting the dude in the nose, but because he got like super dark. But in that moment, he was trying to help his son. It's like, okay, you're dealing with bullies. This is what you do. Like you stand strong and stuff like that. And he was trying to, someone was trying to talk to him. And of course, the mission came up, which this is something, I think I mentioned this in the premiere, actually, now that I think about it. Oliver getting busted, as far as him, like the fake picture in this episode, it didn't surprise me because I thought it was something that was an actual moment. Because, and this is just across the board, they do this all the freaking time. The only person that can't do it is probably Kara and Supergirl, because she already takes the glasses off to be Supergirl. But they always take their mask off. Barry's always taking his mask off in the Flash. Like, it's me, or something serious happens and he like takes his mask off because he's surprised. I'm like, what are you doing? It's 2017. And Oliver does the same thing. He'll like lift his hood up, which makes it easier to see his face. And there are moments where he does take his mask off and it's like, I cannot comprehend the things they're doing. In this moment where he's talking with his son in the limo, he gets this random call, hits a button and is like, stop the car, I gotta go. Obviously, he didn't go to the mayor's office because they would have taken him there. So it's just like little stuff like that in my head. I'm just like, I think he'd get busted if he did stuff like that too often. Like, his drivers would be like, I wonder what the mayor just did. That's really odd. No one knows where the mayor is. There's the Green Arrow. Little stuff like that is what makes things really obvious. And of course they have moments like that with the FBI agent in this episode, and she even says at the end she's not stopping her investigation. I don't know how deep they're going to go with that idea, but I am very curious. And with the way they ended it, where it's like Diggle's supposed to take over, obviously that's not going to be permanent, although it seems like based on the promo he does tell the team exactly what's going on with him, and that's why he's using the crossbow bolts, because I'm sure he got beat the F up in the beginning because he can't do this and be shooting arrows. Like, his arm is too messed up. And it's only going to get worse. I do have to wonder if Diggle's going to be in the show, in the role that he's in, at least permanently, because he has degenerative cell damage. That's insane. That was way worse than I thought it was going to be. I was like, okay, it's tough. He has to go through that, physical training or something to kind of finally, get things back in order. Although it had been 6 months, which is why I was suspicious in the last episode. Like, it's been a long time. Why it has to be permanent. And it turns out the reason it ever came up is because it's degenerative. Like, it basically just started because it's just getting worse and worse. So there are a lot of elements that kind of came together. I know I'm like jumping around, but I actually enjoyed this episode. I was like, I like all the stories in this, even the Felicity-Curtis stuff. I was like, it's little stuff. It's a very simple story, but it was actually entertaining. It brought up a really funny point that I love when they do this in the shows. But when they talk about how everybody's making money, it's like, that is a great point, because it's always something like you see that on YouTube. If you go read comments for especially Flash, everyone forgets that Barry got like, he must have got like $1 billion effing dollars from the first Harry, like from Eobard Thawne, because they're still paying for the entire base and everything. There's that idea in the last season to make it a museum so that they can make more money. That never came to be. So Barry's just got like $8 trillion effing dollars, and that's how Iris was able to afford the apartment, which, because we don't know what the F she does anymore for work if you watch The Flash. But it was really funny in this episode where they're like, what does Diggle do? It's like his wife does work for Argus, so I'm sure she's making, trillions. So it's like, oh yeah, and it was like really funny. And Curtis is like, I'm not, I'm actually like doing my coding thing. And they do officially talk about him and his husband where they did actually get divorced. So he's like, I didn't take a cent from him, and I've just been doing like some freelance coding, and that's how I've been making my money. And I guess Felicity's money's been running out as far as like Palmer Tech, so she's freaking out about what she's gonna do. So they talk about that throughout the episode, and her plan was to have them go into business together, which actually just makes a ton of sense. I'm surprised that never really came up before. It was like, why don't we just do our own business? And basically they could just stay in the Arrow Cave if that's what they want to do. Which, speaking of caves, I know I'm jumping around like crazy in this episode. They made a full-on Batman reference. Like, they talked about Bruce Wayne, and I was like, someone could put Bruce Wayne's face on my face, or in the picture, because it's definitely a doctor photo. I was like, that's not the first time that the shows have referenced Batman for sure. They referenced it like a couple of times. They mentioned it. It was in the last season. I remember bringing this up last season because they referenced Batman like twice in the last season. They talked about Bloodhaven, and then there was something else they referenced last season. I was like, are they moving towards some Batman stuff? Because I was very curious if there was like a new show that was supposed to be coming out. I don't know if it was because of like the new Teen Titans show that's coming out or whatever's going on there, but I think it was just random references. But I was like, okay, another Batman reference. And with them kind of going throughout the episode, that was just one of the funny moments. And super early on too, and Oliver was really taking things in stride. It was like, oh, anything good on the news? And he was almost cocky a little bit, and ultimately, of course, it worked out because it had to. But the way he went into it, I guess it was funny because that's the first thing Lance says is like, you're taking this in stride. He's like, yeah, I did it before. And they bring that up like 4 separate times. It was like, yep, we've done this before. And, like some people would freak out, and then other people would be like, yeah, we've also done it. Did it right once. We can probably do it again. They bring up old characters to be like, yeah, this is how we did it last time. Diggle possibly taking over, which they reference more towards the very end of the episode. When Oliver and Diggle are talking, it was like, yeah, Felicity and I spoke about that, and we don't think it would take enough heat off of you. And it was like, they brought up like which I actually really liked. It was cool that they brought up a lot of those different references, and pretty much every single way that they've ever covered for Oliver being the Green Arrow was basically brought up in this episode. So I thought that was actually kind of cool the way they kind of handled that. But just the way they kind of went through the story, all the different little moments with the characters, definitely well done. Oliver and his son I thought was really good, and the emotional moments of that with his son being like, I'm worried that you won't come back, and Oliver makes the promise that I'll always be there and I'll come back every single time. And even him and Renee have a really good moment, which is like, that's kind of crazy. It was like some rare stuff, almost like characters not doing what they normally do. Diggle lying to the team, and Dinah officially finding out about it, being super pissed at the end, which I actually love, like when she was getting choked, and he's like, his hand is shaking, and of course he can't pull the trigger because he might shoot her, and of course she's super awesome, so she just spins around the dude and flips him, and she just gave him the darkest eyes when she looked at him. It's just like, could have died there. Thank goodness I didn't need your help. So it was kind of cool, just like all the elements and the interactions and stuff with the characters was really well done. I am curious how things are going to play out, of course, going into this next episode with, everything that happened here, finding out that not only is Diggle wounded, but it's only getting worse. Because at some point, I would have to imagine with it being degenerative, that means that at some point he wouldn't be able to actually like lift his arm at all. I'm not a scientist or a doctor or anything like that, but I do know degenerative means it's continually going away. So at some point, if his arm's shaking just from lifting, or you're at least from pointing, and technically it is just from lifting and it's shaking, that just makes me wonder like what they're going to do with his character in the future, and they kind of have a mini stopgap like they showed in the promo where he uses a crossbow bolt. It's like, that makes total sense. That way he doesn't have to worry about aiming like the gun, even if it shakes a little. Basically, the arrow is like right in the middle no matter what. It's centered amongst the entire crossbow bolt, or the crossbow. So I was like, all right, that's at this point an okay measure, but I'm sure there's some way that they can do it if he like leaves for a little bit and he goes through surgery or something. I would assume. But at the same time, considering they did the 6-month thing where he found out exactly what happened to him and all that stuff, I guess I'm only going off of this because the show is doing it, and I really hope that this is the case. But there better not be a reason that he didn't do it within 6 months, because if there's just a surgery that you can just do to fix that, which I don't know if there is or isn't, that would be just really, really dumb. It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever, because it would take a little bit of time, do the surgery, do the recovery, and at this point, he'd be fine. So if there is a simple surgery that exists for degenerative cell damage, which I don't think there is, that would just be dumb. So I'm sure they'll come up with some sort of magic tech or actual magic solution for Diggle at some point during the season. But I hope there's not a real world solution to that. At least not one that's like, you do surgery and then it's like a couple of weeks and you're good. Because otherwise, that's just dumb. Like, it's just horrible writing. It's like, there's no logical explanation for someone who has that sort of injury to not, kind of have things taken care of. So we'll see how that plays out ultimately. But I am looking forward to how things are going to play out with Oliver, at least attempting to give up the team and, kind of let Diggle take over as the Green Arrow. So that should be fun. In the next episode, Diggle kind of being in over his head, the team kind of working around him and helping him kind of build himself back up and whatever happens there. I'm sure the investigation stuff will play a part at least a little bit in the next episode. It might, be more relevant as the season continues onward, but it would be cool to see that impact even the next episode. Like, what happens when Oliver truly is taking a step back from the team and from actually being Green Arrow? What does that do to the investigation, and how's that going to play out for his character and really all the characters? Because even Curtis says early on in the episode, if Oliver gets busted, not too much of a leap, towards us. So there's a lot, to that. Like, he's definitely not wrong. It's some very simple stuff. So I am curious how that's going to play out for really the rest of the season. We'll see exactly, like I said, how far they really decide to push the FBI stuff. But that should be fun with them kind of going through that, and Oliver stepping away from the team for the next episode. I would love to see him not be a part of the team for at least 2, maybe 3 episodes. I think that would actually be really, really cool. I think that would be just great for the series. I think it would just be an interesting dynamic, especially with his son, because that's the whole reason he left. Them building up this relationship, and then naturally something has to happen. It's like, this is just so horrible, we can't possibly call Flash, who's like, with his speed 2 minutes away. So we need Green Arrow to come back. Can't get in touch with the legends who literally jump through time. Only Oliver Queen. So something has to happen that naturally sends the city into a spiral and, freaks everybody out. But it was definitely a great episode. Like I said, I love the interactions. Even the simplest stuff with Felicity and Curtis, them having their own business. I'm curious to see, kind of what that does for the characters. Diggle obviously, taking over for Oliver. Oliver spending time with his son. Of course, the story, which I kind of jumped over because I've been talking more about like future things than this actual episode. The story itself was definitely cool. Anatoly showing up was a huge surprise to me, and I love that. I love the fact that he showed up, for one, super early in the season, but 2, it's Anatoly, so he's awesome. And even though they aren't friends anymore, he was great in this episode. Like, it was dark, but then it got to the end, and it was like, man, this looks still a cool character. Like, he went through all this crappy stuff. He kidnaps the guys. They get 3 out of 4, which I really want to talk about that scene because I forgot. Why didn't they have like a live feed of that base? Felicity was like, oh, there's 4 heat signatures in the freezer, and then the team goes there, and it's like, we're 1 hostage short. It's like, oh, they must have moved them. And all I could think was, why didn't they have a live feed of that? Why wasn't either Felicity or Curtis, either one of them, on that 100% to make sure, hey, this is where they are, this is where they stay? That seemed like the simplest thing in the universe, and when they did that, I was like, oh, they must have moved them. I was like, that's like 1 + 1 = 2. You didn't account for someone might be moved, so maybe let's keep a set of eyes on this thing. And that really made me mad. I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, they must have moved them, and that wasn't accounted for. That was crazy. I really wanted to bring. I'm glad I actually went to the Anatoly stuff, because of course that's why they had to go get him, because he had the final hostage. But that was such a crazy moment where I was like, that just doesn't make sense. Like, they didn't have all the stuff that they're doing. Curtis has literal spears that can redirect missiles, and they couldn't just keep the satellite feed up for, I don't know, what, half an hour? However long it took them to, like, suit up and go do the mission. Clearly it took some time. It was like, they just couldn't keep that feed up and be like, oh, one of the heat signatures is moving. You know, this is where they're headed. You know, two-part mission, that sort of thing. It's just like, okay. Crazy. Just didn't make any sense to me. But wanted to mention that. But like I said, they get to the end, they beat up everybody. Rene does get back into the field at the end of this episode as well. But they go through, and Oliver ultimately gets to, I can't remember the exact guy's name, I'll just consider him the ambassador. And so he gets to the ambassador, and Anatoly shoots him, gives him the cure, everything's good. And Anatoly talks to him and was like, you know, I asked for the 20 million because I knew you had it. I didn't ask for anything more. I got kicked out of the Brotherhood because of my relationship to you, so I'm showing them that I'm not weak. Asked for this specific amount because I know that that's exactly what you have. And so after Oliver cures the guy, he's like, he has nothing to do with this. And he was like, I made him a part of this. And then he kills him, which I thought was actually a cool scene because I was like, holy crap, that's one of the darkest things. Oddly enough, it's mostly because he's going against one of his friends. But that's like one of the darkest things we've seen Anatoly do. Because typically he doesn't, excuse me, at least when we see his character, he's not actually involved with Brotma stuff, except for this time and really the last time, which is, you know, a part of why that relationship fell apart to begin with. So when he shot him, I was like, that's actually kind of a cool moment. And Oliver has that confrontation with him where it's like, you know, you're like, this isn't you. Like, even the last dude, Gregor, wouldn't have done that. And he's like, he would have. You just don't get it. Like, you're naive. And it's like, you think I'm a horrible person, but I'm an honorable man. Like, was your son kidnapped? Was there a bomb planted in his school? Anything like that. None of that stuff happened. I did not attack your son. I barely attacked anyone, really. Like, I have the cure for this guy. No one really had to die. It's just, give me my 20 million. Boom, he's cured. I'm out of here. And it's like, I wonder what would happen, you know, if someone who wasn't so honorable kind of came at you. And then that's when we do find out, even with Oliver talking to him, is like, you know, why'd you put the picture out? He's like, oh, I didn't. I'm an honorable man. And then he takes off and is like, that was actually a really cool scene. Like, I love that scene. I don't know when we'll see Anatoly again, or, you know, what this means for his character as far as him being kicked out of the Bratva and what that means for future storylines, because this was, you know, fairly recent after the last season. So that sort of time span makes sense. And so I would assume that this was like his first big mission, trying to get everything back in order, because it's like, all right, I was kicked out because of my relationship with you, so I utilized that relationship to show them how strong I truly am. And also I thought I could succeed because I know you had the 20 million. It wasn't like asking for money that the city just had to like make up out of nowhere. It was like, nope, I know you got this money. You have it, I want it, you give it, I'm gone. So it was actually a really cool moment with Anatoly kind of just leaving. It's like, all right, I failed, but I'm going to show you that I'm real effing serious. And he kills the guy. He didn't need to because he knew he was losing at that point because he came in, he got the cure, and it's like, huh, okay. You know, you put me to the test. This is that final moment. I'm killing this guy. And of course, Oliver won't kill Anatoly. And of course, he won't even injure him and take him in, because who knows what may or may not be said if, you know, someone who knows your secret is in there. Especially considering at that point, Oliver thought he did put the picture out. So even, you know, even more so in that case, before he actually asked the question, I was like, well, I definitely can't take him in because he'll just tell everyone, because that's why he sent the picture out. So very interesting conversation with them towards the end. I kind of want Anatoly to come back already, because that was a really good, you know, this is a really good episode for him. It was like him as the actual villain was really entertaining, and that relationship and them thinking that the picture happening to come out at the exact same time as him and all that stuff really worked. So it was just another reason I like this episode. And honestly, I am surprised by how much I liked it. Like, they had some action in here for sure. You know, the first sequence where, you know, they have, like, you know, the shootout, and they were pretty serious in that first part. Like, people were just getting, all the reporters were getting shot up. Lance driving the truck, he hit like 3 people. They showed 3 people and get hit by the truck. I was like, they're actually pretty serious during this first fight sequence. And then other stuff was a bit more normal because it was Oliver, you know, as the, you know, Oliver and the team just beating up people. But that first thing was people just getting shot and falling down, and Lance like plowing through dudes and knocking them to the side. I was like, that actually seemed really intense, even though, of course, nobody ended up hurt, and the truck was seemingly bulletproof. They were, like, shooting up the front for a minute there before it finally slowed down. But I was like, man, I like some of the action, but really, it was the dialogue that made me kind of love this episode. It was just like everything that was in it was actually really entertaining, and of course, it was entertaining as far as present day stuff and what it's definitely going to lead to for future episodes in this season and possibly the series, as a whole, depending on how certain elements play out. But all in all, really liked the episode. Of course, would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And naturally, with Diggle taking over, I would love to know your theories on how in the world that's going to play out, how many episodes you think it's going to last, and what you guys want to see from him taking over the team, whether it's the team element or Oliver and his son, what you guys want to see from that story as well. So please put your comments down in the comment section below, and of course, thanks for watching.